The great council chamber floated in the darkness between stars, a massive ring of crystalline light where the 7 elder species gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. Today the chamber buzzed with an energy that had not been felt in thousands of years. Captain Vexthar of the Kalari stood at the center platform, her silver scales catching the light as she presented her findings to the assembled leaders. "Honored elders," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "The quarantine zone is no longer silent. For the first time in recorded history, we are detecting quantum signatures and electromagnetic broadcasts from the Sol system." The council members shifted in their seats. Some leaned forward with interest. Others pulled back as if the very mention of that forbidden region carried danger. Elder Moravan of the Zenthari spoke first, his ancient voice like wind through leaves. "The quarantine zone has existed for 28,000 cycles. Our ancestors placed the warning beacons for a reason. What you propose is foolishness." "With respect, Elder," Vexthar replied. "Our ancestors also left us no explanation, only warnings in dead languages. The Deathworlders sleep. Let them dream. But what if they are waking? Should we not know what we face?" The debate continued for hours. Vexthar showed them the intercepted signals, strange sounds they called music, mathematical equations, images of a blue and green world teeming with life, stories transmitted through the void, tales of beings who called themselves humans. "They appear primitive," said Counselor Thresh of the Valorian Unity. "These signals suggest early industrial development, perhaps early information age. They do not even possess faster-than-light travel." "Then they pose no threat," Vexthar argued. "This is our chance to understand why the quarantine exists, to make first contact with a new species. Is that not our highest calling?" More debate followed. Finally, the vote was cast. By a narrow margin, the council approved a survey mission. 1 diplomatic vessel, lightly armed with a crew of 23 scientists and ambassadors. Vexthar would lead them. 3 weeks later, the survey ship Harmonious Dawn approached the boundary of the quarantine zone. The crew was excited, chattering about the possibilities. They had studied the human transmissions endlessly. These creatures seemed fascinating. They created art and music. They asked questions about the universe. They seemed gentle, curious, much like the younger species the council had guided before. As they crossed into the zone, they passed the ancient warning beacon. It was older than some civilizations, a dark cylinder tumbling slowly through space. When Harmonious Dawn came within range, it activated, broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple, repeated in dozens of languages, most of them extinct for millennia. "Turn back, turn back, turn back." Vexthar ordered the ship to continue. They had come too far to retreat now. The journey to the inner system took days, even at faster-than-light speeds. They emerged near the orbit of a massive gas giant, the humans called Jupiter. Their sensors immediately lit up with contacts, hundreds of them. Thousands. "Captain," her sensor officer called out, confusion in his voice. "I'm detecting artificial structures throughout the system. Habitats, mining stations, defense platforms. This system is heavily developed." "That's impossible," Vexthar said, moving to look at the display herself. "The signals we intercepted suggested a pre-spaceflight civilization. Perhaps those signals were old?" someone suggested. But Vexthar felt a chill run through her scales. The signals had been recent, current, unless— "Captain," the communications officer's voice was urgent. "We're being scanned. Multiple sources. The scanning technology is— I've never seen anything like it. It's rewriting our shield harmonics in real time." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Systems flickered and died, then came back online, but different. Changed. The ship's AI core, normally a comforting presence, went completely silent. Evasive maneuvers. Vexthar ordered. "I can't," her pilot replied, hands dancing uselessly over controls that no longer responded. "The navigation system isn't accepting commands. We're being moved. Something is towing us." Through the viewport, space itself seemed to ripple. A massive structure decloaked ahead of them, so large it dwarfed their vessel like a mountain beside a pebble. It was geometric, angular, covered in what looked like weapons batteries. The design was unlike anything in galactic records, aggressive and functional with no regard for the flowing organic shapes most species preferred. "Broadcasting friendship protocols on all frequencies," the communications officer said. His voice shaking, no response came. The structure simply pulled them closer, drawing harmonious dawn into a cavernous bay. The last thing Vexthar saw before darkness took her was a symbol painted on the interior wall. White letters on blue. United Earth Space Command. When she woke, she was in her captain's chair. The bridge was quiet. Too quiet. Her crew slumped at their stations, breathing but unconscious. The ship's systems hummed normally, but she could feel that everything was different. Changed. Violated. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the bridge. It showed a human woman in a dark uniform with strange insignia on the shoulders. She had brown skin and black hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes were hard, calculating, but not cruel. Captain Vexthar of the Kalari, the human said, and Vexthar's blood froze because the woman spoke perfect galactic standard, the language used by the Council itself. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Command. You have entered human space without authorization. You have exactly 72 hours to explain your intentions and convince me why I should not consider this an act of espionage or preparation for invasion. We came in peace, Vexthar managed to say. We are diplomats, scientists. We received your transmissions and wanted to make contact. Our transmissions, Commander Chen repeated, and something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. Yes, we've been broadcasting those for quite some time. Radio, television, cultural data, all of it 50 to 200 years old. Useful for maintaining the illusion of a primitive civilization. The words hit Vexthar like a physical blow. Illusion? Did you really think, Chen asked, that a species capable of splitting atoms and reaching their own moon wouldn't eventually reach the stars? We achieved faster than light travel 217 years ago, Captain. We've had quantum computing for 160 years. We've been monitoring your Galactic Council, intercepting your communications and studying your languages and technology for over a century. But why? Vexthar whispered. Why hide? Why the quarantine? Commander Chen's expression became somber. Because we know what we are. We know our history. We know what humanity has done to itself again and again. We looked at the stars and made a choice. We would not become what we feared most. We would not bring our violence, our tribalism, our endless capacity for war to an unsuspecting galaxy. She leaned forward, and her eyes were full of something Vexthar couldn't quite name. Sadness, determination. We put ourselves in quarantine, Captain, to protect you from us, and now you've broken the seal. The question is, what happens next? Vexthar's crew woke slowly over the next hour. They found themselves confined to the bridge, unable to access any other part of their ship. The harmonious dawn had become a prison, its systems responding only to human commands. Food and water appeared through materialization ports that hadn't existed before, the technology far beyond what the Galactic Council possessed. Commander Chen visited them regularly through hologram, always professional, always watching. She asked questions about the Council, about their intentions, about galactic law and customs. Vexthar answered truthfully. What choice did she have? These humans clearly possessed technology that made deception pointless. On the second day, Chen appeared with an offer. I'm going to show you something, Captain. Consider it an explanation, a justification for why we chose isolation. The bridge displays changed. Images flooded the screens, thousands of them, moving at a speed that should have been too fast to process. Yet somehow Vexthar understood each one. Human history unfolded before her eyes. She saw early humans primitive and struggling, fighting predators with simple tools. She saw the rise of civilizations, beautiful cities, art and music and philosophy. Then she saw the wars. Endless wars. Humans fighting humans over land, resources, beliefs, skin color, invisible lines drawn on maps. The weapons evolved from clubs to swords to guns to bombs that could level cities. The images continued. A weapon called an atomic bomb, splitting atoms to release hellish fire. 2 cities destroyed in seconds, hundreds of thousands dead. Yet humanity survived, rebuilt, and somehow learned. They created laws, organizations for peace, tried again and again to be better. But the wars continued. Smaller but constant. Chemical weapons. Biological weapons. Cyber warfare. Vexthar watched humans poisoning each other, designing diseases, hacking systems to collapse entire economies. Every time they created something new, they found a way to weaponize it. Do you understand? Chen asked quietly. This is what we are. We've had world peace for almost 70 years now, the longest in our history. But we remember. We remember what we're capable of when we're afraid, when we're desperate, when we convince ourselves that the other side is less than human. Vexthar felt sick. Her species had known conflicts, small disagreements that were settled through debate and compromise. Nothing like this. Nothing approaching this scale of organized violence and cruelty. When we achieved faster than light travel, Chen continued, we had a choice. We detected your council's communications. We knew there was a galactic community out there. Some of our leaders wanted to rush out immediately to join you, to share our culture and learn from yours. Why didn't you? Vexthar asked. Because others remembered history. They remembered colonialism, imperialism, genocide. They remembered how every time humans encountered other humans who were different, who had resources we wanted, we found reasons to justify taking what wasn't ours. We looked at ourselves honestly, maybe for the first time, and we were terrified. Chen's hologram walked to the viewport, looking out at the darkness beyond. We discovered that this region of space was already quarantined. The warning beacons were thousands of years old. We don't know who placed them or why, but we chose to honor them. We decided to stay contained, to watch you, learn from you, but never to impose ourselves upon you. But you've been developing, Vexthar said, her mind racing, building, growing all this time. Yes, we've colonized our entire solar system. 16 billion humans live on planets, moons, stations, habitats throughout Sol system. We've built quantum computers that can simulate entire universes. We've created AI that rivals our own intelligence. We've extended our lifespans, eliminated most diseases, solved hunger and poverty within our own population. Chen turned back to face Vexthar. We've also built weapons you can't imagine. Every advancement we make, we immediately consider its military application. It's in our nature. We can't help it. Even our peace is maintained through the threat of mutually assured destruction. Then why reveal yourselves now? Vexthar demanded. Why not just send us away? We would have left thinking you were primitive, harmless, because you found us. And more will come. The quantum signatures you detected, they were from our latest experiments. We're developing technology that will make containment impossible. Within a decade, maybe less, we'll have the capability to travel instantly anywhere in the galaxy. When that happens, the quarantine ends whether we want it to or not. Chen's image solidified, becoming more focused. We need to make a choice, Captain. We can retreat further, shut down our experiments, trap ourselves here forever, or we can try to join your galactic community, to contribute what we've learned, to help where we can, but always with the understanding of what we are. You're asking for permission, Vexthar realized. You could have destroyed our ship. You could have erased all evidence we were here. But you didn't. We're asking for a chance, Chen corrected. A chance to prove that we've learned from our mistakes. That we can be more than our history. Vexthar looked at her crew. They were listening, watching, processing everything they'd seen and heard. She saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. Curiosity, understanding. You said you've eliminated hunger and poverty in your population. Vexthar said slowly. You said you've extended lifespans, cured diseases? Yes. Could you do the same for other species? Chen smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. We've been waiting for someone to ask that question. Yes, Captain. We can help. We want to help. But we need you to understand the price. And what price? The price of knowing what humans are capable of. The price of understanding that the same hands that can cure disease can also create plagues. That the same minds that solve problems of scarcity can also devise perfect strategies for conquest. We're offering partnership, but you'll sleep less soundly knowing we exist. Vexthar stood, drawing herself to her full height. I need to consult with my crew, and then I need to return to the council with your proposal. You have until tomorrow, Chen said. After that, we'll need your decision. If you choose to report us as a threat, we'll understand. We'll retreat deeper into our quarantine and accept isolation. But if you choose to advocate for us, to give humanity a chance to join the galactic community, then we'll need you to be completely honest with your council about what we are. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Vexthar and her crew alone on the bridge. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, her science officer, a gentle Valorian named Kelth, broke the silence. They scare me, he said quietly. Everything about them scares me. Me too, Vexthar admitted, but they also fascinate me, Kelth continued. A species that understands its own darkness and chooses to fight against it. That's rare, maybe unique. Most species never develop that level of self-awareness. Vexithar nodded slowly. She'd been thinking the same thing. The humans had shown them horrors, yes, but they'd also shown tremendous growth, change, and most importantly, choice. They weren't slaves to their nature. They were constantly struggling to be better. We vote, she decided. This affects all of us. We'll decide together whether to recommend humanity for contact. The vote wasn't unanimous. 3 of her crew wanted to recommend permanent quarantine, too frightened by what they'd learned, but 20 voted to give humanity a chance. When Commander Chen appeared the next morning, Vexthar delivered their decision. We'll speak for you to the Council. We'll tell them everything you've shown us, the good and the terrible. We'll recommend supervised integration into galactic society. Chen's expression was unreadable. Thank you, Captain. I hope you don't regret this. So do I. Vexthar said honestly. So do I. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most attended in living memory. Representatives from every member species filled the observation galleries, and the chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Vexthar stood at the central platform once again, but this time she felt the weight of every eye upon her. Honored elders, she began. I have returned from the quarantine zone with findings that will change everything we know about galactic civilization. For 3 hours, she presented her report. She showed them the images of human history, the cycles of violence and recovery, the terrible weapons and the beautiful art created by the same hands. She explained human technology, their quantum computers and AI systems that operated on principles the Council's scientists didn't fully understand. She told them about the self-imposed quarantine, about humanity's choice to remain hidden rather than risk becoming conquerors. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some council members called for immediate military action, demanding the humans be contained by force. Others argued for diplomatic engagement, seeing opportunity in human technology. Still others wanted to reinforce the quarantine, to leave well enough alone and hope the humans stayed contained. Elder Moravin called for order, his ancient voice cutting through the noise. Captain Vexithar, you recommend supervised integration. Explain what that would mean. Humanity wishes to contribute to galactic civilization, Vexthar said. They have medical technology that could save countless lives, agricultural techniques that could end hunger on struggling worlds, but they understand the danger they represent. They propose a gradual integration, with restrictions on their military expansion and council oversight of their activities. And if they violate these restrictions, Councillor Thresh demanded. What then? They've already demonstrated technology superior to ours in many ways. How would we enforce limitations on a species that could potentially overpower us? Before Vexthar could answer, the chamber's display screens activated. Commander Chen's image appeared, addressing the Council directly. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she said. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Command. I apologize for interrupting your proceedings, but I felt it important to address your concerns directly. The chamber fell silent. No one had authorized this transmission, yet here was a human, speaking to them from across the galaxy through systems they'd thought secure. You're right to be afraid, Chen continued. You're right to question whether you can trust us. Trust must be earned, not demanded. So allow me to propose a test. A new image appeared on the screen showing a star system at the edge of Council space. Planets burned. Ships lay broken in orbit. Even through the static and interference, the devastation was clear. This is the Veroni system, Chen said. For 3 years, you've been fighting the Vrexil swarm there. The swarm has consumed 17 colonies, killed millions, and shows no sign of stopping. Your forces are losing ground daily. You've written off 40,000 colonists trapped on Veroni Prime as casualties you can't prevent. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vrexil situation was classified information, known only to the Council leadership. Yet the humans knew everything. We've been monitoring the situation, Chen admitted. We propose a demonstration. Allow one human vessel to assist in the Veroni system. If we prove ourselves worthy allies, you grant us provisional membership in the Council. If we fail, or if we demonstrate behavior that concerns you, the quarantine remains in place and will retreat back to Sol system. This is preposterous, Councillor Thresh shouted. We cannot allow an unknown military force into an active combat zone. Then those colonists die, Chen said bluntly, and the swarm continues consuming worlds. I've studied your tactics, counselor. Your forces focus on defense and preservation of life. Admirable goals, but ineffective against an enemy that only understands consumption and growth. You need someone willing to do what you won't. Elder Moravin studied Chen's image carefully. If we agree to this test, what assurances do we have that your vessel will limit itself to the stated mission? None, Chen replied. You'll have to trust us. Consider it the first test of whether coexistence is possible. The debate that followed lasted 2 full days. Finally, by a narrow margin, the Council voted to accept humanity's proposal. 1 human vessel would be permitted to enter the Veroni system. Council observers would accompany it, monitoring everything. Vexthar volunteered to be one of those observers. 3 weeks later, she found herself aboard the UESS Indomitable, a human warship that made her deeply uncomfortable. The ship was massive, larger than anything the Council operated, but it felt cramped inside. Every corridor was functional, efficient, designed for rapid movement and damage control. Weapon systems lined every deck. The crew moved with military precision, their uniforms identical, their procedures practiced to perfection. The captain was a tall man named Marcus Rodriguez. He had gray in his hair and scars on his hands, marks from some long-ago battle. When he greeted Vexthar, his smile was warm, but his eyes were those of someone who'd seen too much. "Welcome aboard, Captain," he said. "I apologize if our ship seems harsh compared to your vessels. We build for function, not comfort." "I understand," Vexthar replied, though she didn't, not really. "When do we depart?" "We're already underway. We'll reach Veroni in 14 hours. 14 hours. It had taken Council vessels 3 weeks to reach Veroni from their current position. Human faster-than-light technology was even more advanced than she'd thought. The journey gave Vexthar time to observe the crew. They were diverse, these humans. Different skin colors, different features, speaking different languages in their off-duty hours. Yet they worked together seamlessly. She asked Captain Rodriguez about it during a meal. "We learned the hard way that diversity makes us stronger," he explained. "For too long, humans fought each other over superficial differences. When we finally achieved global unity, we realized that our varied perspectives and approaches gave us advantages. Different ways of thinking, problem-solving, creating. We still have our conflicts, but we've learned to resolve them without violence." "Mostly," Vexthar said, remembering the history Chen had shown her. "Mostly," Rodriguez agreed with a rueful smile. "We're not perfect. We probably never will be. But we're trying." When they reached Veroni, the situation was worse than the report suggested. The Vrexel swarm had grown massive. Millions of bioships consuming everything in their path. Council forces were in full retreat, trying to evacuate what civilians they could while defending a rapidly shrinking perimeter. Rodriguez studied the tactical displays for exactly 3 minutes. Then he started giving orders. "All hands to battle stations. Launch the electronic warfare drones. Activate quantum jammers. Weapons free on my command." Vexthar watched in horror and fascination as the Indomitable entered the combat zone. The ship moved like nothing she'd seen before, aggressive and unpredictable. Human tactics were chaos, violence, and perfect precision all at once. They didn't defend. They attacked. Rodriguez identified the swarm's control nodes, the massive bioships that coordinated the others, and went straight for them. The Indomitable's weapons were devastating, tearing through swarm vessels with terrifying efficiency. But more than firepower, it was strategy that won the battle. The humans used electronic warfare to confuse the swarm, quantum jamming to disrupt their coordination, psychological warfare projecting sounds and patterns that triggered instinctive fear responses in the Vrexel organisms. And then came the rescue operation. While the swarm reeled from the assault, Rodriguez deployed landing craft to Veroni Prime. They went in under heavy fire, human soldiers fighting through swarm ground forces to reach the trapped colonists. Vexthar watched the helmet camera feeds, seeing human soldiers facing creatures that had evolved to kill and consume. The humans fought with weapons and tactics that showed centuries of development, but they also showed something else: courage, determination, humanity. A human soldier was pinned down, protecting a group of Valorian children. She could have retreated, saved herself. Instead, she held position, firing until reinforcements arrived. Later, Vexthar learned the soldier's name was Private Jessica Okafor, and she'd been wounded 3 times but refused evacuation until every civilian was safe. 14 hours after entering the system, the battle was over. The Vrexel swarm was broken, its control structure destroyed. 40,000 colonists written off as dead were rescued and being treated in the Indomitable's medical bays. Council observers stood in stunned silence. Rodriguez found Vexthar on the observation deck, watching the rescue ships ferry survivors. "I know what you're thinking," he said quietly. "You're thinking we were too violent, too aggressive, too willing to kill." "You saved 40,000 lives," Vexthar replied. "Lives we'd given up on." "We did what needed to be done," Rodriguez said. "But I want you to understand something, Captain. Every person on this ship hated what we just did. We celebrated the rescue, yes, but we'll mourn the necessity of the killing. We'll have counseling sessions, trauma support, memorial services for the enemy dead, because that's what we do. We remember that violence should never be easy, never be casual." Vexthar turned to look at him. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "Humanity, I mean." "We're trying to," Rodriguez said. "Every day we try." The celebration lasted 3 days. The Galactic Council formally invited humanity to join as a provisional member, with restrictions on military expansion but access to trade, cultural exchange, and scientific cooperation. The rescued colonists spoke of human bravery and compassion. Ships from dozen species traveled to Sol System to establish embassies and begin diplomatic relations. Vexthar allowed herself to believe they'd made the right choice. Then the coded transmission arrived from deep space. And everything changed. She was on Earth for the first time, attending a ceremony honoring the crew of the Indomitable, when Commander Chen pulled her aside. The human commander's face was grim. "We have a problem," Chen said, leading Vexthar to a secure conference room deep beneath Earth's Capitol building. The room was filled with human military officers and a few council representatives, all staring at holographic displays showing vast regions of space. "What am I looking at?" Vexthar asked. "The Corfax Dominion," said a human general with steel-gray hair. "They're a militaristic empire beyond council space. We've been monitoring them since we first developed long-range sensors. They've been watching you too." The displays showed thousands of ships, entire fleets moving with military precision, weapons that could crack planets, soldiers bred for war. The Corfax were everything the Council had feared humanity might become, but without the self-awareness or restraint. "They've been waiting," Chen explained. "The quarantine around Sol System kept them cautious. They didn't know what was contained here, what ancient threat the warning beacons protected. But now that we've emerged, now that we've demonstrated our capabilities at Veroni, they know, and they've decided we're vulnerable. They're invading." Vexthar felt her scales go cold. "Worse. They're targeting the border worlds first, the ones with mixed human and council populations. They want to test our resolve, separate us from you before we've fully established alliance. They believe humans are a death world species with no real combat experience, that Veroni was luck or council assistance." Vexthar stared at the displays. The Corfax fleet was massive, dwarfing anything the council could field. "How long until they arrive?" "They're already here," another human officer said grimly. "The first attacks began 2 hours ago. The border worlds fell quickly. New Harmony, a beautiful colony of mixed species, was burning within 6 hours. The Corfax didn't bother with occupation. They simply destroyed anything of value and moved on, leaving ruins and refugees. The Council's military response was immediate but inadequate. Their ships were designed for peacekeeping and defense, not all-out war. Within 3 days, 7 colonies had fallen and millions were dead or displaced. Humanity mobilized with a speed that terrified Vexthar. Every adult human, she learned, was reserve military. They trained from childhood in basic combat and tactical thinking. It was part of their culture, their determination to never be helpless again. Ships poured out of Sol System, not just military vessels but converted civilian craft, mining ships equipped with weapons, transport haulers refitted as troop carriers. The human military-industrial complex, dormant during the quarantine, roared to life. Vexthar found herself assigned as liaison to Admiral James Kowalski, commander of the Third Fleet. His flagship was called the Defiant, and it was a monster of a ship, bristling with weapons and armor. "We're going to New Carthage," Kowalski told her during the briefing. "The Corfax are besieging the planet. 20 million civilians trapped on the surface, mostly Valorian and Kalari families. We're going to break the siege." "With how many ships?" Vexthar asked. 47, Kowalski replied. The Corfax have over 300 vessels at New Carthage. I'm aware of the odds, Captain. Kowalski's expression was hard. I'm also aware that if we don't act, those 20 million people die. That's not acceptable. The battle for New Carthage taught Vexithar the true meaning of human warfare. She'd seen them fight the Verexil, seen their efficiency and precision. But this was different. This was personal. Human tactics were brutal, aggressive, and terrifyingly effective. They used suicide drones, ships packed with explosives that flew into Corfax formations before detonating. They deployed nuclear weapons without hesitation, calculating acceptable losses and acceptable devastation with cold mathematics. Admiral Kowalski ordered maneuvers that no council commander would consider. He sacrificed ships, sent them on one-way missions to destroy key targets. When the Corfax tried to use civilian evacuee ships as shields, Kowalski made a choice that haunted Vexthar for years afterward. Weapons free on all targets, he ordered. We do not negotiate with hostage-takers. But the evacuees, Vexthar protested. There are civilians on those ships. I know, Kowalski said, and his voice was like ice. And I will carry their deaths for the rest of my life. But if we allow the enemy to hide behind civilians, they'll use that tactic forever. More will die in the long run. I'm making the choice no one should have to make. The Defiant fired. Corfax ships exploded, and yes, some of the evacuee vessels were caught in the blasts. 412 civilians died in that moment. Vexthar watched Kowalski's face as he received the casualty reports. He didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't make excuses. He accepted the weight of what he'd done, but he also saved New Carthage. The Corfax fleet, unprepared for such ruthless tactics, broke and retreated. 20 million civilians were rescued from the surface. The war spread across dozens of systems. Council forces fought alongside humans, and they learned things about their new allies that both inspired and terrified them. Humans were brilliant tacticians, innovative and adaptable. They also had a capacity for calculated cruelty that made even the Corfax hesitate. Psychological warfare was a human specialty. They hacked Corfax communications, broadcasting propaganda, showing captured soldiers being treated well, sowing doubt and confusion. They studied Corfax culture and exploited every weakness, every fear, every superstition. They also showed incredible bravery. Human soldiers died protecting council civilians. Human medics treated wounded enemies. Human commanders shared supplies with refugee fleets even when their own people went without. Vexithar saw both sides of humanity during those terrible months. She saw a human pilot, call sign Raptor, deliberately crash her damaged fighter into a Corfax command ship to save a transport full of Kalari children. She saw human engineers work for 72 hours straight to repair a damaged council station, refusing rest until every life support system was functioning. She also saw human commanders make choices that would give her nightmares. The sacrifice of the colony ship at Meridian Station. 3,000 humans volunteered to remain on a damaged vessel, knowing they would die when it detonated near the Corfax Fleet Admiral's flagship. They sang as they waited for death, broadcast their voices across all channels, songs of defiance and hope. The explosion destroyed the flagship and killed the Admiral, throwing the Corfax invasion into chaos. It also killed every volunteer on that colony ship. Vexthar attended the memorial service afterward and watched as human military leaders read each name, honored each sacrifice, wept openly for their dead. This is why we feared ourselves, Commander Chen told her during the service. Not because we can't fight, because we're too good at it. Because we'll sacrifice anything, including ourselves, to win. We wanted to be better than this. You are better, Vexthar said, though her voice shook. You're also this. Both things are true. The turning point came at the Battle of Crossroads Station, a massive engagement that involved forces from 17 species. The Corfax committed their reserve fleet, determined to break the alliance. The battle lasted 6 days, and when it ended, the Corfax were in full retreat. But the cost was terrible. Millions dead on both sides. Entire ships lost with all hands. Colonies reduced to rubble. The Council's economy was strained to breaking. The survivors were traumatized, exhausted, changed forever by what they'd experienced. Vexthar found Admiral Kowalski in his ready room after the battle, staring at casualty reports. He'd aged years and months, lines carved deep into his face. We won, he said without looking up. We broke them. They're retreating back beyond the edge of council space. At what cost? Vexthar asked. Kowalski finally met her eyes. Everything. It always costs everything. That's the price of war, Captain. That's what we tried to warn you about. Was it worth it? She asked. That's not for me to decide, Kowalski replied. The survivors, the ones we saved, they'll decide if it was worth it. I just carry out the orders and live with the consequences. Vexithar sat down across from him. When I first met Commander Chen, she asked if we understood the price of knowing what humans are capable of. I thought I did. I was wrong. Most species are, Kowalski said. You build your civilizations on cooperation, on avoiding conflict. That's admirable. It's what we're trying to become. But sometimes the universe sends something like the Corfax, something that only understands strength and violence. And then you need someone who remembers how to fight. Someone like humanity, Vexthar said. Someone like humanity, Kowalski agreed. For better or worse. The council called an emergency session to discuss the war's aftermath. Humanity requested a formal seat on the council. 5 years passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The scars of the Corfax War healed slowly, but they did heal. Colonies were rebuilt. Refugees found new homes. Trade flourished between human and council worlds, bringing prosperity and cultural exchange that enriched both sides. Vexthar, now an official council member representing the diplomatic corps, watched these changes with cautious optimism. Humanity had kept its promises. They'd maintained the agreed-upon restrictions on military expansion, though their existing forces remained formidable. They'd shared their medical technology freely, curing diseases that had plagued council species for generations. Their agricultural techniques had ended hunger on 12 different worlds, but they'd also remained uniquely human. Their art and music spread through the galaxy like wildfire, passionate and emotional in ways that other species found both disturbing and captivating. Their literature explored themes of conflict, redemption, and moral complexity that made many council members uncomfortable. Their sports were violent. Their entertainment often focused on war and struggle. The Sol system itself remained partially quarantined, a compromise that satisfied everyone. Humans welcomed visitors and trade, but the inner system, the planets where billions of humans lived, stayed restricted. A reminder, a safeguard, a symbol that humanity still remembered what they were. Vexthar visited Earth regularly now, maintaining her role as one of the primary liaisons between humanity and the Council. On this visit, she was scheduled to observe something she'd requested years ago, but only now been granted permission to see. Commander Chen, now promoted to Admiral, escorted her to a school on the outskirts of Geneva. It was a beautiful facility, all glass and gardens filled with the sounds of children learning and playing. This is where we teach them, Chen explained as they walked through the corridors. Every human child receives the same basic education: mathematics, science, literature, art, but also history, all of it, the good and the terrible. They stopped outside a classroom where teenagers sat in a circle, discussing something with their teacher. Through the transparent wall, Vexthar could hear the conversation. The atomic bombings were necessary, one student argued. They ended the war, saved millions of lives that would have been lost in an invasion. They killed civilians, another countered. Innocent people who had no say in their government's decisions. That's not victory, that's mass murder. The teacher, an older woman with gray hair, nodded at both students. These are the questions every generation must wrestle with. Necessity versus morality, intentions versus consequences. There are no easy answers, which is why we study history honestly. Not to glorify it, but to learn from it. Chen led Vexthar to another room where younger children were learning combat training. But it wasn't what Vexthar expected. The instructor taught them holds and strikes, yes, but spent equal time on de-escalation techniques, conflict resolution, and when to walk away. We teach them to fight, Chen said, because we never want them to be helpless. But we also teach them that fighting should be the last resort, not the first. Every human child learns both compassion and combat, and must understand the responsibility that comes with both. It's strange, Vexthar said, watching a small girl successfully pin her partner, then immediately help him up and check if he was okay. Teaching violence and peace together. It's honest, Chen replied. We're capable of both. Denying either side would be a lie. So we acknowledge our nature and choose every day who we want to be. They visited the memorial garden next, A vast space filled with markers for every human who died in the Corfax War. Thousands of names carved in stone, each one representing a life, a story, a choice to sacrifice for others. We remember them, Chen said quietly. Everyone. We tell their stories, honor their sacrifice, and use their memory to remind ourselves why we fight. Not for conquest or glory, but to protect those who can't protect themselves. A young couple stood at one marker, holding a small child. The woman was crying softly, and Vexthar realized this must be family of one of the fallen. The child, too young to understand, played with a small toy, laughing innocently. We also remember why we seek peace, Chen added, so that child grows up in a galaxy where such sacrifices aren't necessary. Over the following days, Vexthar attended conferences, visited research facilities, and met with human leaders from across Sol System. She saw a species still struggling with its nature but determined to evolve beyond it. They had violence in their history and violence in their present, but they also had hope, creativity, and a stubborn refusal to accept that things couldn't be better. Then came the emergency summons. The Council needed her immediately. Another crisis had emerged from deep space, and this time, even the ancient species were afraid. The Council chamber was chaos when she arrived. Displays showed something massive approaching from the dark space between galaxies. Not a fleet, something bigger, something that made the Corfax threat look insignificant by comparison. Elder Moravin's voice was grave as he addressed the assembly. We have detected an anomaly unlike anything in our records. Initial analysis suggests a vessel, but the scale is incomprehensible. It masses more than most moons, and it is heading directly for Council space. What is it? Someone asked. We don't know, Moravin admitted. Our best scientists have studied the data and found only questions. The technology involved is beyond our understanding. What we do know is that it will reach our borders in approximately 30 days. Have we attempted communication? Vexthar asked. Constantly. No response. It simply continues on its trajectory, ignoring all hails. The chamber erupted in debate. Some wanted to flee, evacuate border worlds, and retreat deeper into Council space. Others argued for a military response to meet the threat with force. Still others held out hope for peaceful contact, believing any species capable of such technology must be advanced enough to seek dialogue. The Council turned, as they increasingly did in times of crisis, to humanity. Admiral Chen addressed them via hologram from Earth. We've analyzed the data you've shared. The object is definitely artificial. The energy signatures suggest technology that manipulates space-time itself. As for its intentions, we can't determine that without more information. What do you recommend? Elder Moravin asked. Chen was quiet for a moment. We do what humans do best. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. We mobilize defensive forces, evacuate non-essential personnel from potential impact zones. But we also send our best diplomats and scientists to attempt contact. And we do it together, showing a unified front. And if it proves hostile? Counselor Thresh asked. If this is an invasion force? Then we fight, Chen said simply. All of us together. If this thing is as powerful as the data suggests, no single species can stand against it. But together, maybe we have a chance. The preparations began immediately. Human and Council forces positioned themselves along the projected path. Evacuation ships stood ready to rescue civilians from border worlds. Science vessels equipped with every scanning technology available launched to study the approaching anomaly. Vexthar volunteered to join the contact team. They would intercept the object in deep space, far from any inhabited worlds, and attempt first contact. If they succeeded, billions would be saved. If they failed, at least they'd buy time for others to escape. The contact team gathered on the UESS Endeavour, humanity's newest exploration vessel. Captain Rodriguez, her old friend from the Indomitable, commanded the mission. The crew was mixed, humans and Council members working side by side, every species contributing their expertise. As they traveled toward the intercept point, Vexthar found Rodriguez on the observation deck, staring at the approaching anomaly. Even at this distance, it was visible, a dark mass that seemed to swallow the stars around it. Nervous? She asked. Terrified, Rodriguez admitted with a slight smile, but also excited. This could be first contact with something truly alien, something that makes all of us, human and Council alike, seem similar by comparison. Or it could be the end of everything we know. That too, Rodriguez agreed. But fear can't stop us from trying. That's what humanity learned. That's what we're trying to teach the galaxy. You face the unknown, you try to understand it, and you stand ready to defend against it if necessary. The intercept happened on day 28. The Endeavour positioned itself directly in the anomaly's path and broadcast greetings in every known language, human and council, plus mathematical sequences and universal constants. For 3 hours nothing happened. Then the anomaly slowed, changed course, approached the Endeavour deliberately. It's responding, the communications officer reported, voice shaking with excitement and fear. The vessel was impossibly large up close, a structure that defied easy description. Geometric but organic, crystalline but fluid, ancient but somehow alive. Lights moved across its surface in patterns that might have been language or might have been something else entirely. When it finally spoke, it did so in a way that bypassed technology entirely, projecting thoughts directly into the minds of every being on the Endeavour. We are the archive. We have traveled between galaxies for eons, recording and preserving. We detected the quarantine zone's dissolution and came to investigate. Thank you for watching and comment for